All right, we're live on Monero Talk. Very special guest today, Daniel Krawsiz. I've been following you on Twitter for quite some time. Followed your original blog that you had. What was it called? Satoshi Institute, I believe, or Nakamoto Institute. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, just when you speak, you're somebody I listen to. Can't say I agree with everything you say, and I think you would agree that it's a good thing that I'm not agreeing with everything you say. I try to maintain an open mind with everybody I listen to. But yeah, you're certainly one of the people that I listen to very closely. So I'm glad that you were willing to come on the show, and I would just love to have a discussion with you today about Monero in particular. I'm sure we'll talk about other things, but would love to kind of dive into Monero if you're willing to do that and kind of get your opinion on Monero.
Okay, sure. But I don't know that much about Monero, so
Okay,
I'll
well
probably just
we'll
have to
take it
ask
slow. We'll take
a
it
lot of
slowly.
questions. But well, first of all, thanks for saying about how you've enjoyed my stuff over the years, um, and I think that it is important to engage with people who have different ideas, and the ability to do so ought to be sort of like a minimum kind of qualification for being somebody who's worth talking to. So I'm excited for our discussion.
Awesome. So I guess how would you introduce yourself? What's your role in the Bitcoin space, in the crypto space? How would you describe yourself?
I have been a Bitcoin investor for a while. I have uh, uh, I first got Bitcoin in 2011, and since then, a lot of my work has been influential in Bitcoin, and I have done a blog that was on the Nakamoto Institute, and this was a site that was intended to collect as much of Satoshi's original writings that we could. I and my former friends, because we knew that what he said would need to be scoured carefully and should be easily available.
I noticed you said former friends. What do you mean
Well,
by that?
well, the BTC was taken over by ideas that are inimical to the value of Bitcoin, or so I believe, and so so I had to leave this organization because it was taken over, and uh, a consequence of money in networks is clustering. So what happened when the coins split was people changed how they were connected to one another, because we had one money that became two effectively, and the way that different people thought about the value of Bitcoin determined how they were going to end up clustering with one another.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, while that was going on, I had a YouTube show called Bitcoin Stuff, and This is a show that I designed to try to talk to people who were able to engage with different ideas, and to reject people who had effectively been programmed to believe in an idea that wouldn't work. So what I say is that the people who believed in the current path that BTC is on are not imagining something that is capable of functioning in the future, and they cannot win by attempting to control people's thinking. Which this is how I see that. This is how I see them behaving, and I believe that their ability to convince people that BTC is a good idea has no connection to what kind of economy can actually be productive in the future. So anyway, while that was going on, I was doing my show, and so my show was for people who wanted to think about different ideas.
So the split you're talking about is obviously Bitcoin, the original Bitcoin Cash and BTC split. When there was that split, so did you completely move over to Bitcoin Cash at that time, or you maintained a belief in both or a hedge in both? It sounds like you've completely abandoned BTC at that time. Is that actually the case?
So what I said on my show around then is that not splitting old UTXOs is a position of agnosticism. So if you cannot reason about the future well enough to be able to say what kinds of rules are sustainable in the future, then not splitting your old UTXOs is a good idea. And I call that the Bitcoin index, because that's what you would have if you didn't split old UTXOs. And so I will not. So I also said on one episode that the people who do split their UTXOs are like gladiators, and the people who don't are like senators.
So are you a senator or a gladiator?
Well, it's better to be careful about what information you reveal. So my index fund idea is something that's good if you want a position of agnosticism, but if you really do know who is going to win, then you would want to de-diversify from the index fund into it, and you would become a gladiator when you do that. But I'm not going to say how my own position relates to these. We should talk about investment strategy in terms of how to apportion portfolios to beliefs. That's better than talking about what our own portfolio looks like.
But why? I've heard you say this in the past, but isn't this a perfect opportunity for people to literally put their money where their mouth is, and to kind of show what they actually mean by showing what they actually own?
Well, I think that in Bitcoin we can have a partially inverted hash that demonstrates opportunity cost better than portfolio. So so I think that people should put their money where, or they should put their energy where their mouth is, and you should apportion opportunity costs that are easier to evaluate, because an investment in Bitcoin, that's future oriented, and in order to assess the value of Bitcoin, you need to integrate information from about the whole economy. So if I say that I spent Bitcoins on something, um, that doesn't mean the same thing as saying that I spent energy on something.
Mm-hmm. So I'm fairly certain you believe that there's going to be kind of one coin to rule them all. What is your thesis on which, if that is the case, on which one would ultimately win and why? And has that thesis evolved, or has it essentially remained the same, and just everything around you has kind of, the space itself has been evolving, but has your thesis evolved as well? And what is the thesis today?
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody learns over time. So, like, I've always seen Bitcoin. Well, every form of money is a cooperative unit, and the competition between different forms of money is zero sum, because the value of the money has to do with the size of the network that it puts you in. And so if you have like roughly equal sized monetary networks, and one of them becomes slightly bigger, then that one has an advantage that only gets bigger as more people switch over. So uh, so uh, so that's my argument for why there should be just, well, why there will ultimately be just one coin, and the the value of these coins, or at least what the way that they compete, is through their ability to create value. So they have to be able to draw new people in with greater value consistently in order to succeed, because they're always in competition with other forms of money. So the the key to succeeding in the zero sum competition is to find the best other cooperators. And what I think we've seen in the whole crypto space is lots of people who are not really thinking about what is better cooperation. And when they see it, they do not recognize it, because they don't know that that's what they should be looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so you have well, anyway, I think that this is what has been happening in BSV, and I don't think that the people in the other coins really understand that that this is what they're supposed to be doing. And I think that people have been calling BSV a scam, when really they just don't understand what is better about it. But to me, BSV is capable of consistently producing value more than competing monetary units, which means that ultimately we won't have any other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And like in the past, we've had these splits in Bitcoin, but the people who have been thinking about cooperation, who have found each other in BSV, are conscious of the way that splitting reduces value in monetary units. So they're not going to do that anymore. What they're going to do instead is consistently produce better value than the other monetary units, because they've learned how to maximally leverage one another.
Okay. Well, what I'm hearing from you is basically that the underlying thesis is that the coin that will win is the one that will essentially be the most conducive to the greatest network effect, and that will achieve obviously the greatest network effect. But why? I mean, what differentiates Bitcoin? I know what differentiates. I have my thesis, and I know what I believe differentiates Monero from the other coins. But I'm not understanding why you believe, how you're choosing one coin over the other. Why Bitcoin SV? What does it have? What characteristics does it have that will allow it to achieve network effect more effectively than any of the other coins?
It has more people who are better at leveraging one another's value. So it has
those are
better
the people using it. But how about but why is it is it something about the technology that allows it to have that, or it's just that those people happen to be working on that?
Excuse me, the reason that Bitcoin, well, all monetary units are forms of cooperation. So the monetary unit that is better is the one that better enables cooperation. So the people who are better at leveraging one another's ideas better understand what makes money valuable. So what will happen in BSV is that more uses will be constructed more quickly, because more people are leveraging one another's work. So you have a more productive economy in BSV, and so the reason that Bitcoin is a good idea is Bitcoin is a solution to the Byzantine generals problem, right? So what that means, or what that should mean, the valuable version of that idea is that everybody on Earth is a Byzantine general. Okay, so everybody can act independently, and the money will still be consistent across the entire world. And the Bitcoin solution is to use big blocks, because that is going to be that's the way to maximally to process the maximal amount of information. And
but doesn't big blocks potentially reduce the ability of one CPU, one vote by causing centralization? It becomes more difficult for people to run full nodes. Mining networks themselves may tend to centralize. How is that leading us to which I assume you're saying we should get to, right? Is one person, one CPU, one vote? Is that the equivalent of what you're saying here? Where you're saying where Byzantine general problem being solved, we're all Byzantine generals. By all I mean every one CPU, one vote. Is that what you're saying? That's the ultimate goal?
No, I mean, I think that we should use ASIC machines. We shouldn't do CPU mining.
All right, one unit, one vote, one person, one vote. Is that fair?
Well, I mean, it's ultimately about the ability to transform energy into partially inverted hashes. So it's about amounts of energy that you are able to consistently throw away.
Right, but you say the breakthrough is the Byzantine general problem has been solved, right? And then
no. I mean just making transactions. That's what you get with Bitcoin. So everybody on Earth is a Byzantine general because they're making transactions, and there isn't a double spending problem. That's what we get with big blocks. And when we don't have big blocks, when we try to you do not have a solution to the Byzantine generals problem that is capable of incorporating all people so that they can all act independently with some different network topology. So we want to have all the people be able to make transactions very easily. That's what makes them Byzantine generals, that they get to make transactions and they don't have to worry about it. They're able to act independently of one another
on the core protocol level, as opposed to using something like Lightning Network that could arguably achieve that on another layer. So you're saying
the Lightning Network does not improve upon Bitcoin with small blocks. It's the part with the proof of work that is the solution to the Byzantine generals problem. Then the Lightning Network is not a solution to the Byzantine generals problem.
Okay.
So every time,
totally agree.
Okay, so it doesn't add anything.
I get you. So that's your thesis then. So now I'm so the essentially the coin or the protocol that has solved the Byzantine general problem and done it in a way in which anybody can opt in and benefit from that. Is the one that you think is the best, is the winner, and you think Bitcoin SV is the one that has achieved that?
Yeah.
Okay. How about these other elements? Obviously, me being a Monero, I'll just quickly tell you my thesis. So my thesis is digital cash. So maybe just kind of a slightly different way at looking at it. I assume you would say that as well. You think that allows Bitcoin SV to act as digital cash in the purest form compared to any of the others. But if I believe Bitcoin, the invention of Bitcoin, the purpose of Bitcoin was the creation of digital cash, and that was the breakthrough. Solving the Byzantine's general problem allows for that. But then other elements of digital cash are that every unit should equal every other unit. Every atom of gold equals every other atom of gold. Theoretically, every US dollar equals every other US dollar. So how about those elements? Where do you stand on that? Obviously, I believe Monero does that well. It's focusing on being fungible. Do you think fungibility is a requirement? And do you think Bitcoin SV achieves fungibility? What's your opinion there?
Well, I think that hypothetically, people may have preferences about which coins they accept based on the history of those coins, and given that information about the history of the Bitcoins is public, people can potentially have preferences that have to do with that history, and that would make Bitcoin not fungible. But realistically, the value of money is it's a future oriented idea. So if you have preferences about the past of the money, that's not really how you should be thinking about money. The value of the money is about the future productivity of the economy, and people don't really have a very good reason to worry about the past, I would say, unless that money was stolen, in which case then I think they would have a preference about whether they were going to accept it, because then they would they would want it to be returned to its rightful owner instead. So I think that that's what Bitcoin gives us. It gives us money that is it's easy to return to its original if it gets stolen. But otherwise, people would want to think about it in a future-oriented when they're.
You were.
It just said it.
Go ahead.
Just said there was a network problem, but yeah, I think people would just want to think about Bitcoin in terms of the future, and they're not going to be worried about having preferences about the past of Bitcoin.
So you don't think the protocol would be more efficient or ideally efficient if every unit equals every other unit? You're okay with ethics being able to essentially disrupt the transfer of value instead of just using it as a tool. Like gold, if I give you gold, there's no history attached to that. I could very easily erase the history attached to any piece of gold by whatever, melting it down. Gold is very, very fluid in that respect. 1 unit equals 1 unit. You don't think that's a necessity for money. In fact, you think you should be able to reverse transactions or be able to have an ethical influence on the protocol.
Well, I think
because you said stolen, but I mean, define stolen. What is it? Who stole what from who? Who was right? Who was wrong? Who owned? There's a lot of implications there. I mean, what you call stolen, somebody else may not consider stolen. There's there's a lot. Now you start getting into these arguments of trying to determine the ethics behind people's transactions.
Well, first of all, I mean, I think that all units of Bitcoin are equal, from practically speaking, because people don't. It doesn't make much sense to worry about the differences between the different coins as far as their history goes, because once you have them, then you get the same thing, no matter where you got them from, right? As far as the future of the network goes, as far as as far as how the network works, and ethics is about reciprocity. So people can have different ways of being reciprocal with one another, and those different patterns can be more or less conducive to producing value. So so if like to me, what Bitcoin gets you with the traceability is it gets you a coin that's stupid to steal, and that's a lot better than having a coin that isn't stupid to steal. And as far as the definition of stealing, yes, there are instances when I think people do not have a very good idea about what is stealing, and I would disagree with what some people think is stealing, right? Because I think that taxation is not something that people pay voluntarily for services. So the only thing I can say is you have to choose from what options are available, and it's so to me, like what to me a coin that's sort of built the way BSV is ideal, and we may have to argue about what legal system is going to be the best possible one going forward. But like I wouldn't want to trade that for a coin that isn't traceable, because to me that is a coin that isn't stupid to steal.
So you see the traceability as a feature.
Yeah. I think that it's a way that...
So you think gold would be better if it was traceable?
Well, no, I think that all things...
It would have been adopted as money in such a way it has been if there was a traceable version of gold and a gold as we know it. The traceable version of gold would have been superior today to the untraceable version.
Well, it would be harder to get away with killing somebody to get their gold. So, yeah, to me that would promote civilization more quickly.
And that gold would have ultimately beat out what we know as gold today. It would be your theory.
Well, I think that I would have to look at that situation on an individual basis. I'm talking about what I see happening, like in the world now. I don't claim to be saying what I think would happen if in every possible circumstance for what forms of money might win out, but yeah, to me, traceability is a feature, and it's something that people would want to provide one another with if they wanted to be the best cooperators. Well, wait a minute. Now, let me say something about anonymity in Monero, because, well, I mean, there's a big difference between a good that is innately incapable of being traced, like the elements, right? Like gold, because every atom of gold is identical to every other one. So because of its composition, you can't easily, well, you don't naturally have preferences about the history of gold. You would have to ensure that such a history existed before you would be capable of having such preferences. And there was a those are two different things that historically happened, were unrelated to one another, or didn't have to happen at the same pace. But when they're linked together, then then you have a system that is better for cooperation than earlier forms of money, and that's what money is about to me. Because when people are, well, so you have to use a protocol to become anonymous online, because as opposed to the atoms of gold, right? They're the same naturally. Okay, but in a computer network, people are not naturally the same. They naturally leave records. So in order to replicate the appearance of not having a history, they need to go through a protocol. So there's a big difference in the ethical responsibility of achieving this loss of history through voluntarily engaging in this protocol, as opposed to just having something which naturally does not leave records, right? Because in the one case, you are
action.
Right.
Right, but I would see that being applied to people using Bitcoin mixers to mix Bitcoin.
That's correct.
Right.
No, I would say.
But for Monero, it's default. It's by default. It's innately private and anonymous. There is no. Instead you're putting energy. You could put energy in to show your transactions. You can reveal them, through a view key. But by default, it's anonymous. So there is no extra steps. It is, the argument is that it is mimicking gold in that way. I could see what you're saying, applying that logic to Bitcoin. And yes, if you're mixing it, sure. And I agree. I do see that as an issue. But if there's one of these protocols is actually default, anonymous.
I'm sorry, I disagree. You have to run Monero on your computer in order to use Monero. So you're running the protocol. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Monero is built on mixing. It's just that there's that's just what people naturally do, right? It's people
I mean,
naturally use a mixing service to
you
run
could,
Monero, right?
it's not a mixing service. It's built into the protocol
Well,
itself.
but it is mixing. Like that's what it does. I mean, is that right?
Right, but that's I mean that's like criticizing, Bitcoin obviously exists with computers and using programming, right? It's I mean Bitcoin itself is an innate, right? It was created by us, it runs on computers, it's software. So you're saying because the software includes a few extra lines of code that helps it, that allows every unit to equal every other unit, now you're kind of crossing these ethical, it's no longer innately anonymous. Like I'm not really understanding the distinction there
Well, the
between.
distinction is uh, the ethical responsibility of Monero versus Gold, because with Monero you are creating anonymity for other people. So you have you are both the recipient and the provider of any anonymity service. If you use it, you're also a provider of the service
For Monero,
for any anonymity service.
it's not an anonymity service, it's a digital cash service, just like Bitcoin is.
Oh, okay. Well, would you? So, are you saying that Monero is not anonymous?
No, I'm saying it that's one of its features, which makes it good digital cash.
Oh, okay. Well, it's also an anonymizing service. So, but I'm just talking about anonymity services in general. You're in order to have any anonymity protocol, you're a provider if you're a recipient. So anonymity is a group of people providing a service to one another.
Okay. I mean I see the I feel like that's a very uh it's an interesting, I don't really understand the purpose of that argument and what that achieves. So like I don't really get,
It, it
I'm not totally following your
Well,
logic as
it,
to
it
why.
means it means that everyone who provided anonymity has the responsibility of an anonymity service provider. So if you want your anonymity service to be good, you have to ensure that it's good. There is an ethical responsibility for providing the service, and that's different from with gold because you're not providing the service by having gold.
Okay. And that's under the premise that you think anonymity is bad. It shouldn't be a feature of cash, of digital cash.
No, it's just a fact of anonymity. So it's neither good nor bad. I'm just saying, if you are if you used an anonymity service, you are also necessarily a provider of that service. So that's not
Okay.
good or bad. That's just a necessary fact about every possible anonymity service.
Okay. Now, so what if Monero functioned in a different way, where it wasn't so much about the individuals using it, uh, but just even if two users were using it, it was equally as anonymous. Would that also be less analogous to gold? Or now you're now
No,
you're
because you get the anonymity service is worse the smaller it is. You want it to be bigger. If it's going to be a good service, it needs
No,
to
I'm
be
saying,
bigger.
well, theoretically, there are only two people using it. You don't know who those two people are, but you can't detect them.
Oh, no. Well, but you do know who they are. You just don't know which one of them is doing which action as a Monero user.
Okay. Let's focus on something else.
Okay.
Just because I think we're going down a weird line of logic
Well,
here.
I'm just saying that you're responsible to ensure that your service is a good one if you have used an anonymity service. But I
Right.
don't
If
think
you're
that
defining Monero as an anonymity service, which is
no. Well, that was always my understanding of it. But you agree that it includes an anonymizer.
I believe Monero is fungible digital cash.
Okay.
And to be fungible, to have digital cash work as digital cash, and to be fungible at the protocol level, there needs to be a way of allowing or enforcing that every unit equals every other unit. Whatever methods are used doesn't really matter, but
Okay.
that's the goal that's achieved with Monero. With Bitcoin, as you agree, that goal isn't achieved. Every unit doesn't equal every other. Well, you think they do, but practically they don't. We agree that practically they don't, right? Because obviously you can blacklist coins. So practically speaking, in Bitcoin, every unit does not equal every other unit. But you don't ultimately see that as a flaw. You see that as something beneficial to the technology.
Well, it's beneficial because of what it enables cooperators to get from one another.
So right,
Like
so
it's
that's under the premise that the whole purpose of this is a tool for cooperation.
yeah,
Um,
that's what
right.
money is.
Well, it's money is value transfer, right?
Well, but everybody who is
You're
using
assuming a lot. You're trying to boil it down deeper than value transfer. But
well, I
money
mean,
is for transferring value.
well, yeah, but where does that value come from?
People attribute value to it, and then they use it to transfer it.
Okay, well, what is the reason that someone would sustainably be able to hold a form of money in their portfolios without going broke?
What do you mean? What?
Well, the reason things maintain their prices over time is because they're producing some kind of they're producing something that enables the people with it to be more sustainable, right? Um, so, like a stock, um, if the company is good, it'll produce dividends. So that's why you would want to hold the stock. So you have to think about why somebody would want to hold money and what would make a form of money something that would be a long lived part of his portfolio. Like see something that he could keep in there um, without having to worry about it, and it wouldn't lead to his ruin over a long period of time. See what factors about money enable it, because that's what you're calling
Yeah, but
value.
right, that would be
That's
people's
okay, but
belief.
you can't just say value. That's a big thing. Okay,
Sure,
you have to understand why things are valuable.
because we attribute
There
value
isn't
to
just
them.
no, because people who value them incorrectly, right? We attribute value, but people who value them incorrectly eventually don't have any more money, right? So they they fall out of the market over time. So you have to value it correctly in order to stay in the market. So what I'm saying is what is the value of money that is making it something that's enabling the person holding it to stay a part of the market rather than being thrown out with as a pauper. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just people attributing value to it, and they are attributing value to it because they believe it's a technology that is useful for attributing, for essentially transferring and storing value. Gold has value because people think it's one of the more ideal ways for storing and transferring value. It doesn't just randomly have value. It's because it has certain characteristics that make it good for that purpose. Bitcoin, same thing. Monero, I think, potentially even better, which is ultimately my thesis. The one that will win is the one that has the best characteristics for storing and transferring value. Do you think Bitcoin has an innate value? Obviously,
no. The value of every form of money is the other people.
Right, all agreeing that the thing has value.
Yeah, but why do they agree?
Right, because the thing has certain characteristics that make it good for that purpose and that use case. We don't all agree feathers have value.
I don't think that that's what's true. I think that a good reason that people agree that something is money is that everybody else agrees that it's money.
100%. But there's a reason why everybody agrees to that.
Well, it's because of what they agreed upon in the previous day. No, it's the properties of the money are potentially a reason for its value, but ultimately you have to. Ultimately, it is about how the people cooperate with one another using the monetary good, because they're the ones who are really producing stuff. And if there isn't stuff that's produced that is going to be offered in exchange for the coin, then it's not valuable. So money is about how it enables people to cooperate with one another.
Right, that's a use case for money.
That is what it is. It doesn't have another use case. That's what it is. It's a form of cooperation.
It's a form of communication.
Yeah, and the reason people communicate about money is because they benefit from having the shared idea of money.
Sure, but you agree that there's the fact that gold became gold isn't random, right? There's some elements to gold that allowed that to become the thing that humans have this shared vision for as being useful as money, or do you think it's random? Well, that's a big point.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, gold is a good money. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's absolutely necessary that people would have used gold as money, but it seems like a good choice.
Definitely, by many measures, right? I mean, okay, so same logic should apply to these digital versions of it, right?
I mean, same logic, but like you still have to think about how the coins enable cooperation. And just because something is similar to something about gold doesn't mean that that's better for cooperation.
Okay. So when do I get many questions? I guess let's, if you don't mind, if you jump around a little bit here. If Cypherpunk, crypto anarchists, they will tell you, or the idea is that Bitcoin was invented for this purpose of being able to transfer value digitally over the internet without censorship. Do you agree with the cypherpunk or crypto anarchist ideals? Is that something that you agree with? Because they would then also talk about the need for anonymity and privacy. Do you share these values, or have you ever, and do you no longer? What's your opinion there?
Sure. Well, I mean, there are many strands of libertarianism, and I think it's worthwhile to learn about lots of different ones. So I wouldn't I mean, I think that people are going to be wanting to look for sources of inspiration, right? So I think I wouldn't want to say don't go back and read the Cypherpunks because they had some interesting ideas, but I think that what we've seen as far as how the Cypherpunks treated Bitcoin, at least the ones that I know about, and I think looking back on them, they never had the right idea about money, and when they saw something that was a lot better than what they could come up with, they didn't understand it, and they tried to turn it into something else, something that was closer to their idea of money.
Well, was Satoshi Nakamoto, whatever, or whoever, or whatever entity that is he a cypherpunk, a crypto anarchist?
Well, he was certainly familiar with the cypherpunks. So, I mean, yeah, if you to me, I wouldn't. Yeah, the Bitcoin white paper could be seen as a cypherpunk idea, but it's very different from earlier forms of digital cash that were being talked about by the cypherpunks, and like it's a different idea about what money is from what they were thinking. So
How so? Isn't it just that they didn't solve the Byzantine generals problem? I don't think it was, or they actually thought money should be different. What's explain that to me? I'm missing that.
The earlier ideas like BitGold and reusable proof of work are based on the labor theory of value, because they all assume they're attempts to make digital collectibles. So you have to read Shelling Out by Nick Szabo to understand what a collectible is. But basically the idea is that a form of money can exist that has the reason it's scarce is that people put work into it. So, for example, wampum originally comes from shells, but the shells aren't wampum until they are they're shaped into beads, and that takes work, and that's and to me, that seems like a perfectly legitimate application of the handicap principle. But the early cypherpunks wanted to carry. They were trying to invent kind of an analogy with this thing, because they would say you would do proof of work, and then there would be some means of determining how many units of coins had been created based on the work. And so they're thinking about these digital coins like they're collectibles, like you do work and then you get a coin. And but they weren't they were not actually thinking about creating something that is more valuable for other people. And remember, in order to win, a new form of money has to consistently create more value, because it has to be better and better for new people as it gets bigger. They were not thinking like that. They were thinking like the value is created by doing the work. And to me, like that is the labor theory of value. And what I think we've seen since Bitcoin came out is the old cypherpunks have been acting a lot like communists, and they've been acting like they know what is right, and they are willing to gain influence by means that that you wouldn't think prove that they are genuinely working in the interests of Bitcoin, and they have wanted to gain influence over Bitcoin so that they could be like philosopher kings of Bitcoin. They were not thinking about a coin as being like an economy that needs to be related to production in some way, because what they did to Bitcoin made it very difficult for people who actually understood it to get very much done. Making new usages, or more making new stuff for Bitcoin. Making Bitcoin more valuable. The people who understood how to do that were being interfered with by the old cypherpunks in a way that is exactly uh, uh, like the way that communists interfere with the economy by making orders.
But I mean, isn't everybody interfering? I mean, Craig Wright isn't. How is he not acting as a communist or even a despot or a leader of a
Well,
project?
he's a Byzantine general, just like everybody.
Right, but so why isn't what the criticisms that you're giving, Bitcoin Core and these guys, why don't they not also apply to somebody like Craig Wright? Craig Wright, the same criticisms.
Because we in BSV we're all just going for the way the way of producing value. See, we know what the right rules are, so we're just going to do that. And so yes, every time you have a plan to change the protocol, that is central planning, and it has the costs of central planning, just like from Ludwig von Mises, the socialist calculation stuff. Every time you change the rules, that interferes with people who could be doing something, making Bitcoin more valuable, right? So we have had a problem in BSV in the sense that we've had to focus on conceptual work a lot recently, because like a lot of the stuff that I want to do isn't going to be available until February. But after that, then so we do have to endure the costs of central planning in BSV, but those costs are weighted against the benefits in a way that is, somewhat rational, and that's unlike what was going on in BTC, where the idea of having a productive economy had nothing to do with any of the Bitcoin core decisions.
But I mean, even if Bitcoin SV, early days of Bitcoin, weren't there even changes made to the protocol that Satoshi himself did in the early days, or were you? I mean, are you totally against any changes being made to the protocol?
Uh,
Why were
no.
those changes okay, but at what point are changes no longer okay?
Well, nobody understood Bitcoin perfectly, not even Satoshi. And I don't think that I have to have. No, I mean I can't go over every single rule change of Bitcoin. I mean what is important is what genuinely produces value, and so um, what what we have with Bitcoin with big blocks is a way um, for lots of people to all produce value for one another, because they can maximally leverage the cooperation of the other Bitcoiners. So um, potentially there is some rule change that we could make that would uh, improve the ability of Bitcoiners to cooperate. But as the economy grows, uh, uh, like it becomes uh, um, more difficult to for everybody to think together about rule changes, and there's sort of more that is being lost, right? So what we want to do is figure out what the correct rules are uh, as soon as possible, or get the best possible approximation, and then we've got to go. Then nobody will be able to change the rules anymore. Although potentially, if somebody did figure out something, you might be able to do some kind of fork of Bitcoin eventually, but that would just be about that would still be about producing more value. And so there would have to be something about the rule that enabled the miners to bring in slightly more energy over time than the people following the first set of rules are. But um, it's about ability to bring energy into the system, and every time there's a rule change, that means the energy intake is stopped, and um, that's a time when other coins can try to intake energy. So it's really bad to have rule changes, because that's bad for competition, right? So um, once like the um, uh, I'm unaware of any rule changes that we need uh, after February. But to me, the real value, but there may be one that's better. And if there is something like that, I would like for people to figure it out. But um, the real creativity of Bitcoin, the real uh, what people really need to be thinking about is how to improve the Bitcoin economy, not about uh, what what rules might make Bitcoin better. Uh, uh, like, I mean, I would say that what we have in BSV seems to me like it's basically optimal. Like to me, it's working very well. I don't think that there's uh, any reason to believe that we would need to change the rules. You see what I mean? I don't like. It's just better not to. It's better to focus on what you can get when there's stability.
Yeah. I mean, my argument or my opinion on that is that I do think the rules need to be changed until you achieve the point of digital cash. I don't think out of the box, when Satoshi like you said, he didn't know everything. We didn't know everything at that time. Obviously, when Bitcoin was created, it wasn't digital cash at that moment, and that it needed to evolve. It needs to evolve, and then once it achieves that, then the protocol can solidify and maintain itself as digital cash. Before I get your response to that, I just want to quickly, if you don't mind, we have a sponsor on the show, and it's Cake Wallet. I just want to thank Cake Wallet, and the reason why Cake Wallet is our sponsor is because it's the wallet that we recommend, the iOS wallet that we recommend for anybody that's using Monero. It's open source. You hold your own keys. It's vetted by the community. So Cake Wallet, I just need to include that in the show. But yeah, if we go back do you have a response to that analysis? So the idea being that changes to the protocol are okay to do if you're striving to achieve digital cash, and then once you achieve that, then you can ossify.
Well, I would say that you should maximize value. So you shouldn't be limited in your imagination of what cash is. Because to me, you if you want to maximize value, you want to find the rules that maximally enable people to leverage one another's cooperation. And so digital cash is something that Bitcoin is, but it's it's not equivalent to cash. It's better than cash. It's something beyond beyond what we've had as money before, and digital cash is at best a metaphor. Bitcoin is really a new it's the rules of Bitcoin are a kind of cash, but there's a lot more to them than that.
Mm-hmm. But you agree that at its birth, it wasn't perfected yet. It still needed to evolve and change.
Yeah.
But now you think it no longer needs to evolve and change.
Yeah. Well, I hope not.
Okay.
Well, as far as the rules go, but everything else does need to evolve and change. The Bitcoin is like the overarching order, so we want to get that right, and then everything inside it is always changing.
I gotta say, I mean, I personally do not want to live in a world where Bitcoin or Bitcoin SV is the dominant ledger that we're all using, where all transactions are essentially perfectly traceable. That sounds like a dystopia to me, not far from a utopia. You don't obviously you see the transparency as a feature. I mean, how about you personally, using Bitcoin, using these digital currencies, you're okay with potentially everybody seeing your transactions, or potentially knowing how much you have and how much you're sending to people? Is that something you're okay with?
Well, I don't think that you actually need to reveal that kind of information in Bitcoin if you use it correctly.
Given the tech, right? If you use it correctly, but given the technology, isn't it quite easy for that to be the case? Given the amount of incentive that large companies have, governments have in knowing it, and giving the fact that Bitcoin is fundamentally transparent, that it's naturally something that will happen unless you do everything correctly.
Well, I think that ethics is based on reciprocity. So you should think about what what we can see about corporations and governments that use Bitcoin, and when they use Bitcoin, they will also have to follow the rules and leave records that are potentially leave information. But I think that as Bitcoin evolves, people will learn to use it better because that will be built into the software more. But
How will it be built into the software more?
uh, well, I'm sorry. I don't think that I can explain it in any more detail than that. I mean, if there
Well, like
any practice,
examples of
like the
what.
way that the wallet is uh, created in the software, it has rules that make it more difficult for people to identify what it is from what it puts in the blockchain. I mean, I don't. I
Things
mean, I
like things like Wasabi Wallet, like those type of thing. I'm just trying to understand what exactly you mean by that.
Oh, well, like you can keep funds um, in different uh, in different uh, different accounts, right? Like you can have uh, different different accounts that your wallet allows you to spend from in a way that lets you coordinate it how you want. But then it would leave different transactions in the blockchain.
All right. So, but isn't that back
Like
to the same ethical implications we talked about, where you're trying to actively mix coins? Obviously, you're not talking about mixing, but same idea. You're trying to do so, actively, use it in such a way, use the software in such a way where you're now concealing your transactions.
yeah, but I think that you
So you
you
would
have to
advise.
think. Well, I think that you have to think about the ethics of any protocol that you engage in, and um, so like the mere fact that I'm engaging in a protocol with lots of people, that doesn't mean that I think that there is an ethical problem with it inherently. Because with Bitcoin, it's still not good to steal it because um, at any point, people who were stolen from can reveal which records are theirs and um, uh, show to someone who uh, to to someone they choose. They can show them that um, uh, that they were stolen from, because they can they can point to the transaction that moved coins out of their wallet. Um, and that is uh, so the information about how everything relates to one another can be reconstructed. It's just that there's more private information that's necessary to reconstruct it, and people can reveal this information strategically for when they want to show other people what they know about traceability.
Hmm. I'm just seeing some hypocrisy there, though. I mean, I just could just be because I'm not fully understanding you, but I feel like you're walking a very narrow line there. Uh, because 30 minutes ago we were talking about how the protocol shouldn't be actively obfuscating transactions, but now you're saying Bitcoin will evolve to eventually do that using the wallets that you use. And I'm just
Well,
not saying I'm not seeing the difference there.
Okay,
to
well,
why.
what you said is that using Bitcoin potentially um, um, uh, reveals the amount of coins that I have.
Hmm.
Uh, but what I am saying is that it doesn't need to reveal that information to everybody. Um, uh, but if I wanted to um, prove to people uh, that I owned coins, I could still prove where everything I had traced from. You could go back to different identities, and if they wanted to show you, they could show you what they know about where their money came from,
Hmm.
right? So
But
uh, we don't have to reveal information about how much we have, but that's that's different from uh, uh, preventing history from being reconstructed.
hmm hmm so along these same lines, so if the fact that Bitcoin does have this feature of transparency and everything's saved in the ledger and can be transparently viewed. Um, Craig Wright, I don't know if you have opinions there, but I personally didn't follow it too closely. But why didn't he just prove that because he made the argument that he is Satoshi or whatever, and he controls certain keys. Why didn't he just use Bitcoin's features to prove that when he could
Well,
have very easily done that?
I think that he wanted people to. Um, he was looking for people who were looking for a good economy. You see what I mean? I think that he didn't want people to flock to him because they believed he was Satoshi.
But then
Uh,
why was he calling himself Satoshi? Why even
oh,
then?
he was just he was telling some people that he knew. He was telling people that he chose that he was Satoshi. But eventually, he was outed by a magazine article. So the originally, I think that uh, the Satoshi thing may have been outside of his control, but as to why he doesn't want to sign keys, um, I think that uh, he believes in what I just talked about, in keeping private information private and revealing it only to people that you want to reveal it to. And someone who is saying that he needs to um, prove that he has keys, that just doesn't mean anything. And there's no particular reason to comply with the request to prove that he has keys, because what he wants is people who want a bigger economy, right? He
Hmm.
doesn't he
I mean,
doesn't want.
I know for me, from a personal level, and I'm sure many others agree with me that it would have a much greater effect if he actually proved that he was Satoshi. I would be more inclined to then look at Bitcoin SV seriously and use it as I would see that I would believe the economy of Bitcoin SV would grow, because now
Well,
there wouldn't be this doubt that it's run by a scammer, um, so to speak. Now you'd be like, wow, it's actually run by somebody who may actually be Satoshi, given the fact that he controls Satoshi's keys. So wasn't that a more logical way of going about it?
No, because well, we had a big problem in Bitcoin before with people rushing in who didn't understand it very well and who caused a lot of trouble. So, um, so I think that Craig didn't want to maximize. I think that he didn't want to advertise BSV as something that would be attractive to everybody. I think that he wanted to attract people who actually wanted to be productive in Bitcoin and who are not that interested in who Satoshi is, who just see the value of Bitcoin. See, and in order to realize that value, you need to find the other cooperators and leverage what they have to offer. So to me, this Satoshi thing, whether he's Satoshi, it is a distraction from what I was interested, because I have always been interested in finding the other cooperators, right? Because I've always seen money as a form of cooperation. So that's how you leverage that value.
So how do you measure the? I mean, I think the Monero community has many cooperators. The community works very well together. We have skepticism Sundays where where everybody self-criticizes Monero. The community is very open to newcomers. It's open to criticism. It's realizes it's not perfect and tries to work together to achieve a common goal. How do you then measure a community like that against a community like Bitcoin SV and say that one is doing a better job at bringing in people that want to build an economy? I mean, the one indicator you could look at is price, and obviously, if you're looking at price, Bitcoin SV is failing against Bitcoin Core. So, how do you measure this? What indicator are you using to actually make this measurement and determination that Bitcoin SV is achieving this goal of bringing in people that want to build an economy?
Well, investment is about foreknowledge. So you can never prove that you really know the future when you make an investment. So what I'm talking about is what is the future that I foresee. So you don't have to agree that makes sense. But like if I'm right, I wouldn't want to prove it to you because that's information that's relevant to the market. So it's better if other people need to think about the truth on their own. And so and well I mean I would say that what I said about what I was imagining about what Craig was thinking applies to me, because like I think that most of the people in Bitcoin have been causing a lot of trouble for a long time. So I would want those people to be away, right? So I would want people to not understand what's going on in BSV unless they were actually really good. So so my content on YouTube is also like this. It's like stuff that that is it rejects people who are not thinking openly enough. And so I think that it's important to be able to talk about what futures we foresee without being expected to be totally convincing, because fundamentally investment is about uh, um, uh, different different ideas about how to prepare for the future being put in a contest in the market, and we don't really know who was right until we wait long enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no disagreement there. I mean, I don't, yeah. I mean, game theory wise, I guess I should, if I truly believed in Monero and thought it was inevitable for Monero to take over, I should be trying to drive the price of Monero down.
Yeah.
But there's also, at the same respect, you also need adoption to take place. So it's a little bit of chicken and egg problem there. I mean, sure, I would love to acquire as much of it as I can, but for it to actually become a reality, it requires adoption and people talking about it and spreading it. So,
well, so what we're doing in BSV now is making stuff that'll make it stupid for people not to use Bitcoin, because Bitcoin will just do stuff that solves problems that they already have. So we are treating adopters of Bitcoin as if they are first customers of Bitcoin. So that's how we're going to get people in. Now, if you start using Bitcoin as your savings instead of fiat, then that means that you're a Bitcoin adopter, in my opinion. But what we're building is services that that will only work on Bitcoin. So if somebody wants to use them, that means somebody has to have some Bitcoins and use them to make the transactions.
mm-hmm. Bitcoin native apps.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this was a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to cut it off only because I think it's getting long for the viewers. I could talk to you for days. Like I opened up the show, I do enjoy watching your content. I will continue to tune into you and listen to you. I do find there being some hypocrisies there between some of the things you say. I don't know. I don't think that's that could just be my not fully understanding what you're saying. That certainly could be the case. I will continue to listen to you and try to understand your viewpoints, and I'm sure your viewpoints will evolve. I do hope that maybe you could look into Monero a little more closely. I think it's a project worthy of your insight and study. And yeah, once again, I appreciate you coming on, man. If in the future, if you ever want to come on again, I would love to have you. And I enjoyed the conversation.
Okay, well, thanks. Yeah, and I enjoyed talking with you a lot too. And well, I'm glad to well, I'm glad that you're so open to listening to what I'm saying. And sure, we can talk more about hypocrisy next time if you want me on the show again.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Have a good one. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
So long. Ciao.